Good morning to you and good morning to the viewers.
Professor, before we get into the nitty-gritties of this interview, let's just get your reaction very, very quickly to the decision of the Constitutional Court yesterday.
I think that it was really a very unfortunate decision by the Constitutional Court. The Constitutional Court relied a lot on literal interpretation of the Constitution, simply looking at the provisions which relate to the provision of legal representation by the state for those who have a legal dispute or who are facing criminal charges, and also children, but not really understanding that the victims and survivors of the Marikana massacre, there are children involved, even though those children were not before the court. And I think that the other way of looking at it was to look at the Constitution to be able to see that issues of social justice are mentioned in the preamble of the Constitution. Questions of equality and its promotion are values. They are not just rights. So the Constitutional Court followed a rights-based approach rather than really looking at the whole question of achieving justice.
It's maybe a bit of an obvious question, but a lot of has been talked about the fairness, the fact that Advocate Dali Mpofu and his team is now pulled out, which has left the minors without representation, and yet the Commission will go ahead today.
The Commission will continue, according to the chairperson of the Commission, Justice Farlam. What is really the test here is whether or not the public will have confidence that the Commission would have established the truth. You cannot establish truth where one side, that is the state side, the police and so on, have senior counsels, they have very experienced attorneys on their side, and one side is not represented, does not have representation. I believe that it would have been very important for the court really to say, even though this is not a question of criminal trial where the interest of justice would be undermined and so on, it should have looked at broadly to look at legislation such as the promotion of equality and protection of against unfair discrimination and so on. And it could have indicated that the matter ought to be looked at carefully by the executive without directing the executive to do it. That would have given hope and encouraged the executive. The president cannot put together a commission of inquiry to get to the bottom of the what really happened without ensuring that there are resources given to it which would enable the commission to do so. Otherwise, the commission will be seen as a farce or something which is meant to cover up the truth.
Yeah. Professor, a very quick answer from you. What do you think the future of the legal representation of the minors will look like now? Very quickly.
Well, very quickly, I believe that unless some philanthropies come about to try and pay the legal fees, I believe that the presidency still has the responsibility to ensure that the playing field is equal by providing the money for legal representation of the minors.
You know, one of the other things that I wanted to ask you as well is, what impact do you think the decision is likely to bring for the Commission in general? You did talk about the issues of justice and equality.
In general, if no legal representation is given to the minors, the survivors and of the tragedy, and the victims of the tragedy, then the commission will have served no useful purpose at all. And then, of course, the commission, we are still waiting for the actual criminal investigation and to see who is going to be charged and who is going to be tried. So these two processes ought to be running concurrently, but in this case, a decision was made to just have the commission first, but the country is still waiting for really criminal justice process to be initiated.
Now, it was one of our top stories this morning in our news bulletin, and the Farlam Commission has said that it will now finalise the issue of interim funding. It says the matter of a potential donor could be resolved today when it resumes. That is the best case scenario, isn't it?
That would be the best case scenario, but it will still put the government or the state in really a situation where the public will lose confidence in whether or not the state is really trying to support
Professor,
the vulnerable, the weak. Yes.
Professor, we're going to leave it there, but thank you very much for your time. Joining us, of course, from our Pretoria studios, that's Professor Shadrack Gutto, who's the director for the Centre for African Renaissance Studies at the University of South Africa. Let's leave that for now. Let's head over